Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix and this is Overwatch Friday. Basically, some Overwatch footage and talking about an issue within the gaming world this week. Or specifically this week, the YouTube world. If you've kept up with the YouTube gaming world for the past week, you probably heard of the scandals surrounding CSGO, CSGOLotto, and YouTubers T Martin and Pro Syndicate. I'm not going to dive into the specifics of the issues here, as it's been done fantastically by others. I'll just link H3H3's video in the annotation and the description below for those who are unfamiliar. Now, those who follow me on Twitter probably know exactly what I think about the situation regarding these two YouTubers, and how they've purposefully misled their audience for their own financial gain. In particular with Pro Syndicate, who's done this several times before. As you know, ethics and morals are a very important part of my YouTube channel, and to see other YouTubers blatantly disregard FTC regulations, as well as attempt to capitalize on their audience, yeah, it makes my blood boil. It comes as a somewhat of a gut punch, really, as those dishonest hacks have had all the success in the world, while smaller channels who have done things right end up suffering on multiple stages because of it. And I can go all day with blasting them in particular, but as I said, that's been done by hundreds before me. However, I want to take a look at this issue from a different angle, an issue that I think needs to be discussed within the community, and that specifically is YouTube's part in all this. Specifically what role they could be playing in this latest revelation regarding the misleading of viewers by these channels. Because while YouTube is a service where anyone can make anything, the question becomes how responsible are they for the content that's created on their site, and whether or not they should step in to handle penalties to the channels in question, or even shut them down. Now, your initial reaction may be to say that YouTube should be separated from this. They provide the platform like a set of tools for an artist to use. Some may think that for YouTube to jump in and handle things specifically in this case would be going too far in setting a precedent. What's considered right? What's considered wrong? Would this step be moving YouTube one step too far in being a moral authority, and maybe going into the lines of censorship in the future? I'm here to indicate that no, I believe that YouTube has every right to step in and shut these YouTubers down. Maybe not right at this very moment, but it's clear to me that they have the ammo to remove these hooligans from the service. And that's because of the terms of service and community guidelines in place at this very moment. Let's start with the community guidelines, because there's one particular point within those guidelines that can be pointed out here, and that's the section regarding spam, deceptive practices, and scams. In particular, we need to note the scams portion of the guidelines regarding the content that was produced by both T Martin and Pro Syndicate. Let me read it off in its entirety. And I quote, "Some users create content which attempts to trick others for their own financial gain. Content that deliberately tries to mislead users for financial gain may be removed, and in some cases, strikes may be issued to the uploader. Please be wary of claims that seem too good to be true, as they likely are." Now let's apply that to this situation. As pointed out by H3 and For the Honor, CSGOLotto is owned by both Syndicate and T Martin. When trading on the site takes an 8% cut of the skins in question for every gamble. Thus, the more people who gamble on the site, the more money that CSGOLotto makes. Which again brings up the legal question of the definition of gambling, but that's not what's on trial in these specific guidelines. As we know, both Syndicate and T Martin made videos in which they used the website, and did not indicate they had a financial stake in the site in that specific video. They didn't disclose this information verbally or via the description at the time before they were caught. I'll go into the FTC guidelines later on in this video and how they violated them, but for this guideline, it's separate from that case, although it does provide its strength. Now note that there's one word that's at the core of them violating the guideline, and that's the word deliberately. It's clear that the content wasn't forthcoming enough to indicate to viewers that they were making financial gain on the transactions, but whether or not that was done deliberately is the question that has to be answered. And sadly, that's actually a hard one to prove without a shadow of a doubt. However, there's evidence that points to the fact that they did hide the fact that they were the owners. T Martin in particular, the video that indicates that he came across the site told to him by a friend when being the owner of the site. That suggests that he didn't want the connection to be known, and thus deliberately misled his audience. Now, to be clear, T. Martin indicated in a now removed video that he was putting it out as a feeler, but that in itself is still misleading. And that's still purposeful regarding of intention. Putting it out as a feeler when financially involved is still a problem. He also claimed that he didn't own the site at the time, which documentation via the company's founding sorta suggests otherwise. The question is whether or not that is strong enough to concretely nail him via this community guideline. And that's an answer that YouTube has to answer, or would have to answer if T. Martin didn't take steps in order to avoid it. What am I talking about then? I'm not talking about him getting caught updating the description of his videos. I'm talking about the privating of those videos. Specifically, the way community guidelines work is via a user flag system. If you think that a video is violating a guideline, you flag it. I myself have done this before. For example, I did this on a couple of CJ So Cool's videos which had incorrect metadata as pointed out by the prank reviewer. But if the report system's done by users and the videos that are offending aren't able to be seen by those users, it doesn't matter. Reporting other videos on his YouTube won't make a difference either because they aren't the ones offending. This is a problem in YouTube's system right now because now people can panic and erase the evidence that holds them accountable. And let's be clear about something. YouTube has done a horrible job enforcing their own guidelines. Just take a look at the misleading thumbnail section of the guidelines and how sexually provocative thumbnails are supposed to be removed or age restrict the videos. How many of the biggest YouTube channels put boobs in their thumbnails and don't have that happen to them? Hell, technically, you can find a couple of videos on this channel that falls into that guideline, even if they are the main protagonist of the game I'm reviewing in question. There's a lot of YouTubers who break this purposefully or not, is what I'm saying. Sadly, these guidelines that are supposed to be used to protect the users in question aren't being enforced in any sort of way, and thus it turns into the Wild West, and Syndicate and T. Martin are free to keep on doing what they are doing right now. So right now, there may be a question of whether or not they may get removed via the community guidelines. But remember, there may be legal ramifications coming out of the issues with T. Martin and Syndicate, in particular with FTC guidelines. I'll link a Reddit thread involving the video game attorney to indicate the charges they may be facing and the laws that they may have broken. And those laws, if convicted in the court of law, may be the nail in the coffin to shut down the channels in question thanks to the terms of service. First, let's specifically call out 4.I within the terms of service. And I quote, "In your use of the service, you will comply with all applicable laws." Now that makes perfect sense, and if convicted, it's clear that they break this guideline. Now that's a general statement and doesn't actually say anything about their YouTube status, however, but in combination with 7.A regarding account termination policy, it becomes more clear how they could get shut down. And I quote, "YouTube will terminate a user's access to the service if, under appropriate circumstances, the user is determined to be a repeat infringer." This should scare both parties in question, as they made multiple videos on CSGOLotto, and in particular with Pro Syndicate. As mentioned by others, he already has a problem with the FTC regarding Dead Realm, a game that he was involved in, and didn't disclose that information appropriately via FTC guidelines. People have pointed out it was well known in the community, but those people don't understand the FTC guidelines. The guidelines state that every video involved has to have proper disclosure. That's because you could easily stumble upon the video without realizing that information, and then, lo and behold, you don't have the context behind it. This seems to be the likely case in which these YouTubers could get shut down, but that comes with a caveat. See, this is the legal system we're talking about, the system in which everything takes a long time to process. In many cases, it's for good reasons, getting all the facts out there and giving appropriate time to investigate the claims. But with that said, this allows those who have broken the law more time to keep on doing what they are doing. And sadly, if you expect Syndicate or T. Martin to get reprimanded via the law within the year, you're gonna have a bad time. Just take a look at how long it took for the Xbox One machinima issue to be resolved. I'll put a link in the description below. Look, I've said it now and I'll say it again. Regardless of the medium, whether it's journalism, YouTube, or the business world, there are going to be people who are going to game the system to try to screw others in the process. It's a sad state of the world, as you'd hope people who agree to a set of guidelines would actually hold themselves to those guidelines. But let's be honest, Only those who have a set of high moral standards will actually hold themselves to it. And unless YouTube wants to become yet another service that's full of thieves and scammers, then, well, they're going to have to actually take action on these kinds of people. People like Syndicate and people like T. Martin. And they've got the tools to do it. Let's just hope they actually do something this time, because I would like to see people who deserve it actually get the spotlight. Anyway, coming up next week on the channel, Anarcute and Necropolis are review copies that I requested. I have not gotten them at this point, so they may come out, they may, I don't know at this point. If they don't, I'll be focusing on Stranger of Sword City still, as well as Grand Kingdom. Yes, I'm still playing them. They are long RPGs. I'm sorry, it takes a while, especially in these two cases. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe if you want more content like this. In the description below, you'll find the Steam review accompanying this vid, along with social media that you can follow me on, Twitter, Google+, and Facebook groups. And if you want to support the channel, click that Patreon on the left of the screen. And remember, keep on gaming.